Hello and welcome to Ivory Blush Roses. My name is Lisa. Today I'm going to be working on putting together my crazy quilted Christmas tree. There's a lot of little parts to this. I'm not sure if I can get it all done today, but I'll definitely be filming the steps along the way and then putting them together into one video. So come along with me as we take the crazy quilted Christmas tree and get it finished. My first step is to make a star for the top of it. Let me show you what I'm going to use. So here we can see the top of the tree, and I want to put a star on it. I was thinking about using that lace, and it's just too fussy for the simplicity of this tree for me. My first thought was to get some air dry clay and make a star out of that. But then I saw this Fimo. I got two different ones. This one is actually night glow, so that's going to glow in the dark. At first I thought it was a sparkle and I didn't realize it was glow in the dark, so I'm not going to use that. This one is called Mother of Pearl, and I thought, well, that's perfect. I'm thinking I'm going to make a Fimo star to go on the top here. Now my main cookie cutter is way too big. I found an inexpensive set of these little star cookie cutters, and I thought that actually might be just the right size. It's enough bigger that it's not going to look just like these other buttons. I think that's what we're going to do. So that's going to be the first thing we do this morning. In the kit, they recommended using a large funnel as a Christmas tree stand. And so you stuff the tree and then you sort of jam it down on top of the funnel. I didn't like the way the skirt looked on it. I thought it detracted from it. I'm not greatly fond of that idea. In order to stitch it together and get it to stand up, I needed a base, and I thought that maybe a wood base. I have a spade bit, and I'll cut a hole partway through this. When we were trimming some branches from my tree, I found this one, and I thought it might actually do the job. I sort of like that it's a little beat up. It's from rubbing on my roof, unfortunately. But I need to figure out what length I need it. My wood piece will sit down at the base, and I just got this at Hobby Lobby. So I want like that much in the wood, so there'll still be some here. And then the screw will come up through the bottom of it and into that. But it's a little unevenly cut, so I need to trim that and get it nice and square. But I don't want it to stick out too far, I don't think. I think I want it to sit pretty low. I'm thinking we're going to put it in right about there, so it looks like I need to trim it off right up here. I got a lot of things to do today, and it's going to be the nicest weather we probably have for the rest of the month is my guess, because we're going to be almost 60 degrees today. We're going to start by making a star, then we're going to try and work on this trunk and the base, and then we'll get to stitching if I've got time. Let me get going, and let's see what we can get done today. So I'm at the kitchen counter, and I have all of my stuff here. So I have my clay, and I'm just double checking. This is the metallic Mother of Pearl. And so I am going to go ahead and open that. I have the oven pre-warming. I have not played with this type of clay for a long time. So I am not at all sure how this is going to go. And I'm working on one of these Teflon mats. I'm just going to cut off a piece. I'm going to soften this and then I'll be back. So I'm just softening it up. I also have a little bit of this microfine pearl glitter, and I'm just putting it out on that and trying to incorporate that. I want it to be a little more pearly than the actual, and I think that's going to actually work really nice. And then we can always dust a little bit more on that as I go, but just getting it warmed up a little bit. I don't think you can see the pearl in there, but it's a lot more than it was. And so I'm real happy with that. But I think I need to get this softened and add it to it. I'm going to use my paint sticks because I thought that was a good thickness for the star. I just have a piece of dowel. This is actually the piece of dowel that goes on my sewing machine to hold a spool of thread. So we have to be about that far apart. And I am going to rotate it here. So I heard that if you put a piece of saran wrap over it and then cut the shape out, you get nicer edges. So we're going to try it. Oh, look at that. It makes it very pillowy. That's nice. And then I think I'm going to come in and... Yeah, that saran wrap trick was really great. I always wondered how they got all those beautiful little rounded edges on it. And then once it's baked, I can always come back with a little sandpaper if I need to. I need to be able to adhere it to the top. And so I was going to put 2 little holes down here to be able to sew it onto the tree. I think the best hole might be this one here. I want to see if I can go all the way through. There's 1 and 2, and it's pretty smooth on the back. So they're not quite straight, but you know what they're going to do. And I want it to just go in with this pearly powder. Know how much we need. I want to just really accent, especially the points of it. I think we're just going to do the whole thing so it's really pearly. There, I think that's good. I'm going to put this on my cookie sheet, and I have a little piece of parchment paper. I have a little piece of foil to put over it to shield it while it's baking. I'm going to put this in the oven for 30 minutes. I just wanted to show you what I'm working with and what I'm doing. I have my wood base, and I think this is the side I want up. I looked at both sides, and I think this is the nicer looking side. So I just need to measure across. So it's 9.5. And so I'm just going to make a couple of light marks in what I think is roughly the center here. I'll go 4 5/8. And then across, we're 8.5, so 4 1/4. That was pretty close there. That's where my drill bit needs to go. I have this 1-inch spade bit to do there. I am probably going to go get a nail and make a dent so it's easier for me. And I'm going to do the drilling outside. The other thing I need to do is square off this bottom and get it nice and straight. And I checked my bit against that, and I think it's good. So let me go do that. So onto here. I think that should be. About 12.5. Perfect. I'm going to leave it just like that. I took this out of the oven. It went for 30 minutes at 230 degrees, and it's been sitting now for about 20 or 30 minutes. I'm really pleased with it. I think that's going to look great. Let's just bring the tree over here and take a quick look at it. I think that will be good. It'll stick up a little bit, but not too much. For this to last and the pearly stuff not to rub off, I'm going to coat it with polyurethane, and mine is a satin finish. I kind of wish it was a gloss, but I'm using what I have. It's water-based cleanup. I have a cheap brush that is not good for much. We can just tuck it up on that for the moment so I can get around it. So it looks pretty nasty right now, but it dries clear. And we're just gonna put a coating of that all the way around it. I'll do the back side as well, but I wanted to do the front first. Alright, so just going to leave it there to dry. So let that dry, and then I'll probably put a second coat on, and I'll definitely do the back as well. I finished the star. It really came out well. I put a couple coats of polyurethane on it, and it just finished it off nice, and it's got a lovely pearly sheen, and I think it's going to look great on top of the tree once it's all finished. I needed to find fabric for backing, and I came up with a piece of wool from a dress that I had made for myself years ago, and one end of this scrap is just the perfect size for this Christmas tree. I'm going to be stuffing it with wool because I used to be, well, I am a hand spinner, among other things. Let me know if you're interested in ever seeing some of that. I'd love to share my spinning and knitting stuff with you. So many people have given me wool over the years, and there's some of it that's just not very nice to spin, but it'll make great stuffing. And so I'm going to be using some of that. It's all cleaned, so it's ready to go, and I'm going to be stuffing it with that. So I am going to put a piece of muslin on the back of it, just to give it a little bit more stability and make the stuffing process a little bit easier. But step number one is to cut my piece here and get an appropriate sized piece. I always try and make the best use of fabric that I possibly can. I don't like wasting fabric. I just trimmed out the wool to match the shape of my piece. For some reason the camera quit filming. It's about the right size and shape now. I didn't bother cutting out the little extra bits here. We'll do that after it's sewn. But now I can get my muslin cut and then do the little embroidery signature down here that I want to do. I'm going to just take and lay this piece on it, and let's actually do it this direction. Looks like I've got a little lint control to do. Surprise, surprise. Let's just go ahead and do that now, because oh, that helps a lot actually. I'm not going to baste it or anything at this point, although I will give it a quick iron just to make sure I'm working with the piece that's flat and everything's going to be where I want it to be. And I know a lot of this is going to get trimmed off, but I just need it to help me see what I'm doing. We're just going to iron quickly right on top here. Kind of let it steam a little bit. For the moment, that is going to do. And now I want to mark my spot where I'm going to be doing my signature on here. I'm going to aim for about here. I don't want to put it too close to the base where I think it might get tucked under. I've got a white thread here. I'm going to quickly baste that area together. I want just a rough guide so I don't get too far off center here. While I want my signature there, I don't necessarily want it in bright white that it's super visible. So I'm going to choose one of those greens we've been using. I actually think this one might be nice. I like to kind of write it out ahead of time. I just have to give myself the idea of where I'm going with it. I'm going to start with my name. I just do this really simple backstitch signature. Sometimes I just do it with all straight stitches. This piece is maybe a little bigger and a little more special, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more effort into it. And I'm stitching right over that basting. And so I don't have all the letters drawn out, but I know what I'm doing. Each letter has to turn just a little bit. Okay, so there's my name. And now we're going to come over here and do the year. So now we're going to come over here and do our bunny. And no, you don't pronounce my last name that way, although it's been a fun play on words occasionally. If I'm using embroidery floss, I do a split back stitch for this part. Truthfully, on this wool, that probably would have been a good option. On my schoolwork when I was growing up, I always had a little bunny or a mouse drawn on it with this emblem, so that's how that's become my signature little thing. Plus, I just love bunnies. Wonderful. I'm going to give this one last press. Let's go ahead and use my pressing mat. So I'm going to press it from the back here. The muslin on the back is a little bunched up in spots, and that's fine. But I do want it nice and flat because I don't have any other opportunity to do that except now. The moment I sew it together and stuff it, it's no longer able to be flattened. Let's take a look. Yes, I think that works. Let's get it pinned together and we're going to get ready to sew. We're going to put the right sides together. And I am going to be pinning this because it's a little slippery and I don't want it to move. I need a pretty good opening down here to stuff it, so I'm going to leave about that much space. I'm going to be stitching just barely inside my zigzag line. So if you look at that, I'm inside the fabric with that zigzag. So there's not going to be a huge seam, and then I will double stitch it as I go. Area like this, it's a little thick right in there, so we'll put the pin different direction. Do the same thing down here. So let me get the sewing machine out and we'll get on to that stage. Well, here we go. I've got everything pinned together. I have my zipper foot on. I'm all threaded up. Let's see how we go here. And I'm sewing just over the edge of that zigzagged seam. I think we need a bigger stitch for one. I think that will help. The pins out as we go. So where I'm going to have the most issue with other beads and things is right here in these corners. Okay. I do want to go ahead and stitch a second seam on it. And I need to remove the rest of these pins now, so let's get these out. I've got these ones in here at the corners. I think that should be all of them. So I'm going to go ahead and run another one right down the middle of that zigzag. So I think we are stitched together. Trim all my threads. I am ready to start trimming my edges. So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to actually trim outside my zigzagged area when I originally made the piece. I'm going to cut that all the way into the corner there. With all this fabrics, it's bulky. So it may seem like I'm not leaving a lot of extra space, but that's one of the reasons I did that double row of stitching there. With these curves, they're going to have to get clipped, and I think it will just turn nicer. And I don't have an overlock machine, so we're just going to make do. And I'm taking care not to cut my zigzag stitching because that's what helps also prevent things coming apart. Alright, so we're trimmed out. And now I'm going to start clipping these seams. I'm just making it to that second stitching line. I don't want to go any further. So the outer line, I don't want to go into the inner line. And we already trimmed that back into there. I always hate this part. I'm always afraid I'm going to cut into something that doesn't need to be cut. Okay, we're going to trim that in and that one. We'll see here. I did a curved line on that, and I'm not sure how well that will go. And of course, there's a seam right there, which doesn't help either, so we may have to press some of that back here at some point. On the back, I'm probably just going to go straight across, and I may just end up needing to do that on the front as well. Let's turn it inside out. Here we go. Oh my gosh. Moment of truth, folks. Now remember, I've got beads and embroidery and stuff, so some of these points are a little tougher to turn than others just because of how much stuff they have on them. So I'm just trying to turn those tips first, and then we'll start pulling through. And I left that opening big enough so that I have room to work when I'm turning as well as stuffing. I think as we get stuffing in it, that's going to actually make a huge difference. I think we need another clip in there. Oh my goodness, look at it. Starting to take shape. Yeah, I think, especially on these big bottom ones, they feel like they need a little bit deeper clip in there. So I'm going to go to that inner stitching. I'm also going to clip out in here. See if we can relieve some pressure there. See if that helps. Oh yeah, that made a big difference. We just need to do that on all of these. That clip between the branches where it comes down, I don't know if you can see that, needs to go all the way in to the inner line. And then take some pressure off of it by clipping to that inner line about 1/4 of an inch away. Yeah, that makes a big difference in how that lays. That's much nicer. So we'll just do that to the other two as well. So my scissors are really good and sharp all the way to the tip, and that's a huge help when you're doing something like this, especially with all these layers. Let's see if that helped. Yes, huge difference. Okay, well, what do you think? I'm pleased with it so far. We're going to turn the sewing machine off and switch to the other side of the table and see if we can get this stuffed. Wow. I have my trunk piece. I have my base, and I put a mark, and I've already pre-drilled for screw. So the screw actually will sink up inside of here once we screw it in with the drill. And then the plan is I've got some felt feet we'll put on the bottom of it once it's all put together. Right here, there's a little mark, and that's what lines up with that, and that's where I know my straight part is on this. So I'm going to set this aside for now. So I'm going to keep this here because it needs to fit here in it. So we're going to stuff to there pretty tightly and out here. And then I'm actually wondering if we need to have the stick in it to finish. I think I'll probably do the points all the way down. Then we'll put the trunk in and stuff around the trunk. So here's this wool. It's kind of coarse. It's a little bit lumpy in spots. It doesn't spin terribly nice. It doesn't feel nice once it's spun. So this is perfect for stuffing this. It's clean. It's been in a bag for ages. I have a little dowel. It's got a nice rounded top on it and it's smooth, so I figured it's good for packing into corners. We're going to probably go in and do points first. I also don't want it so hard packed that it's going to be difficult to store. I feel like some of these where it hasn't quite pulled out, that's going to be nicer. I'll keep that handy. So yeah, I'm really glad I left a much bigger area for turning. And I am not expert at this. I don't make stuffed animals very often. Can't tell you the last time I stuffed something. And I know from making pin cushions that this can really pack in tight. And I do feel like I need something to do that because it's hard with your hand to get it into that corner. And so I just want to take a look. Once we get it all stuffed, then I'll sew our star on the top. And I think that's going to be wonderful. This has been kind of packed down, so I am fluffing it slightly as I go. I just want to make sure that we're covering all that area. I don't know how tight I want this yet. Well, and I know with the stick in there, it's also going to really eventually want to work its way all the way up to the top. I'd rather it stick out a little further to begin with. So I'm going to move on to the next set of points here. And see, it just fluffs up nice. That's the nice thing with wool. The other thing fluffing it out is that way it also helps me from having harder lumps in some areas than others. Into that next tip. I'm trying to leave enough room for my trunk. Originally I had bought a dowel to do that, but I had to do a bunch of tree trimming here recently, and so there was one that I thought was going to be a good size for that, and so I cut one of those. One of the other things I want to say about this is you could take and make a piece like this, and if you didn't want it to be a three-dimensional thing that's going to be standing up, there is no reason that you couldn't applique it down to something else. Like, think about doing a crazy quilted background. Like if I was doing the green and white, I might do a white background with more stars or snowflakes or something on it, or a dark blue and with starry eyes. You know, be creative. Think about other possibilities that you could do with it. It doesn't have to be a three-dimensional object if that doesn't suit your needs. I'm really focusing on the image from the front because that's the way it's going to be displayed. I'm not as concerned about the back. Now we'll turn it over and take a look shortly, but right now I'm really focusing on the appearance from the front. So this truly is a wool Christmas tree, except for the cotton muslin and the cotton threads. Everything else is wool. Wool, mother of pearl, and some glass beads. And so as I'm doing one section, I can tell where I need more stuffing. Again, just loosening it up so it's not lumpy and bumpy. And I'm trying to make sure that it crosses areas so that I don't have a chunk here and a chunk here and a chunk here, that it melds. I know when you're doing felting, that's actually an important thing, that those fibers go through the whole piece. I can see where that stuck out there, so I need to pull some of that back into the other area, or I need to make everything else match it. Pretty close to needing to add the trunk in. I feel like that one could use a little more. Maybe this one as well. I feel like I need a little bit more right up in here. You probably can see it better than I can. Now we need to fill in that neck. Again, I've got to leave room for my trunk here. Trunk's right about there, which is where I was hoping it would end up. And so now I can start filling in around it. I don't have as much room to work now. This is just such a fun stage of a project when you've been working on something, you know, you've had something going for a long time, and you get to that finishing phase. I love this part of it. I always think it's kind of interesting because a lot of times I enjoy the process of making something more than I actually enjoy the finished object. But I think I'm going to really enjoy this one. Now, if you don't have wool, you can certainly use polycotton. I have taken to saving all of my little fabric snippets and cutting them up into tiny bits and using that for stuffing on small things because I don't do so much big sewing that I have a lot of that. But your thread ends that are too small and your fabric bits, you can save all of that for stuffing. Let's just take a look at the back here, see how we're going. And I do need to add a real lumpy feel right there. Yeah, we're definitely in need of some stuffing back here. Let's see if we can get a bigger chunk. It probably seems counterintuitive to do all that fluffing and then I pack it back down immediately, but I think it helps it with the evenness. I feel like we're a little puffy right there. And we'll be bringing that together there. I gotta stop and take a look here. I think you've been able to see it with the overhead camera easier than me. I'm just gonna set it in the vase here. I think we're about done, folks. I'm just looking at it front and back. I need to seal up these. What do I want to use for that? Grab my spool of thread, and I'm going to use a doubled length of thread for this. And I am using a slightly bigger needle than I normally would, just because it's three-dimensional and I find that a little bit more difficult. Okay, so this is going to be difficult to see. Let's hope that between the two cameras you can actually see what I'm doing because I have to hold it off. So I'm going to start my thread inside. I want the muslin. Just going to bring it up here. This thread's not a perfect match, but it's close enough. I'm just going to finger press that edge underneath. I'm not going to pin it or anything. And we're just going to do that ladder stitch. So I may have to take the stitches one side at a time here. I'm just taking one stitch on each side. I'm going through the wool and the muslin. My stitches are probably about 1/8 of an inch, maybe just slightly bigger. And before I pull it all the way through, I'd take it on the other side as well. I get both of them, then I'm going to pull it up. And they will loosen up as you go, but as you come closer together, then they come back. And I do find it helpful to bring that up a little bit. On my back fabric, which is not stitched together, I'm really having to pull that muslin out. I don't have to do that on the tree on the embroidered side because that has got all that stitching around it. Doubled thread so that you can pull really hard. And now I'm almost at the tree trunk here. I'm just taking one stitch on each side. I'm going through the wool and the muslin. My stitches are probably about 1/8 of an inch, maybe just slightly bigger. And before I pull it all the way through, I'd take it on the other side as well. I get both of them, then I'm going to pull it up. And they will loosen up as you go, but as you come closer together, then they come back. And I do find it helpful to bring that up a little bit. On my back fabric, which is not stitched together, I'm really having to pull that muslin out. I don't have to do that on the tree on the embroidered side because that has got all that stitching around it. Doubled thread so that you can pull really hard. And now I'm almost at the tree trunk here. And I want both of those edges tucked underneath. now that I'm right up at the trunk, I'm going to make a couple of whip stitches, and we're really going to cinch this down. I'm holding my thread really tight. I'm actually going to put a knot here, I think. Just don't want that to come undone. To get around the trunk, I'm just going to make a little running stitch around this base and sew that bottom edge folded. My stitches are about 1/8 of an inch, and I think on this wool you're just not even going to see it when it's all said and done. And then I probably will go back and do that on the back side as well, but I'm just trying to secure that fold. One more. I might need one more. Now we're back to our ladder stitch. And I know it's really tough to see on these dark fabrics, but this is not a full-on tutorial necessarily for that kind of stitch. So I'm just going to do it, and then maybe at some date in the future, if you need, we can do a ladder stitch tutorial. But it's a good way to do a virtually invisible stitch on a project like this. It just pulls those edges right together. I'm just going to make another knot here, pulled really tight. And now I want to stitch this down here, so I'm just going to run back through. I'm going to add just some teeny tiny, almost invisible back stitches just to help keep it secure. I'm doing little back stitches here to secure that fold, and I can tell that my stick has pulled out a little bit. It's a little longer than it was, and that's going to be fine because it's going to sink back down in it as soon as I get this whole thing reassembled. Alright, we're back at our other side, and I'm going to go back and run a couple more whip stitches in here, and then I'm going to make a knot really tight. I'm going to come back up the back. I'm going to run just a couple of back stitches to hold that thread, and then out. I could have added a little bit more stuffing right there, but it is what it is. Alright, so there is that. It does have a very specific direction in order to sit straight, and once I screw it in, that will hold it even more. We need to add the star at the top. Since I can't hide a stitch inside, I'm going to set the star down, so if we look at it from underneath, it's going to sit like so. There's about 1/2 inch here, well, maybe 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to run my beading thread deep enough that I'm catching that muslin, and I'm actually going to, since I use a doubled length, I'm going to catch it with the knot to make it extra secure, just in case I haven't caught that muslin really well. So there's a couple of stitches there, and now let's, how are we going to do this? It's going to show on the back. Alright, well, don't want it to show on the back, so I'm pulling it down. I'm going to stitch back up through, back down, and that way it'll have 4 threads going through it. Are all those threads tight? There's one kind of loose one. We're going to come back with the more decorative thread over it, I think. We'll see here. I may just decide to leave it as is. There, they're all tight. I think we need more, so hold on. I'm going to stitch this off camera here. Can you see that? I'm sort of bending the star tip over. I think we're just going to stitch it on with this nylon thread. It actually sort of disappears on the front of the star, and that's the effect I prefer. Just didn't know how to make it in that narrow star where it went side to side like all the other beads. And now I'm going to make my knot down here. Again, really working hard to try and catch that muslin lining in. It's going to be kind of a hefty knot here. All right, and then I'm going to come up. I think I'm pleased with that. I don't think I'm going to do anything else to it. I'm going to take a little back stitch. I'm going to kind of come down to my seam area, and I'm going to make a second knot that hopefully maybe we'll just take it right through that bead that's right there on the edge. That works. I'm sort of just making my knot through that bead. So there's my second knot, and now I'm just going to do some little back stitching down the side here and bury that loose end of thread. We're going to come out somewhere in the back here. There it is. That's not a very long needle, so it wasn't really easy to do. Okay, I think we're ready for the next step. I pre-drilled the hole in my board, and I also drilled a little larger one in the back so that with the drill, I should be able to push that screw down in so that it's not sticking out on the bottom. I'm going to add a little bit of wood glue in the base of this hole. I'm making a mess here. Spread it around a little bit with my finger. And then we're going to line that up with my little mark that I made on it. I noticed that the stuffed tree can turn on it, and so I just want to double check it's pretty straight. And I'm going to turn it. I have my screw here. It's all ready to go, and my drill is ready to go. And so I did pre-drill the bottom of the trunk. I wasn't expecting it to turn quite so much. So let's see if we can... All right. We're there, folks. It's done. Oh my gosh, except for the little felt feet on the bottom. Wow. Let's go take a look at it. Thank you so much for watching and for coming along on the journey of creating this crazy quilted Christmas tree with me. It's a huge finish for me, and I'm so thrilled with this one. I will enjoy using it here in my home. Thank you for watching. I wish you joy this Christmas season. Happy stitching, and I'll see you in the next video.